A beautiful waitress spills coffee on a millionaire on her first day, but he was already in love with her. What seemed like an accident changed their lives forever, a story of love and destiny that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. The panoramic elevator slowly ascended through the floors of a building in Manhattan, one of the most imposing in the Wall Street area. Emily Johnson nervously adjusted the navy blue uniform she had bought the day before at a local department store, trying to hide the tremor in her hands while holding the white china tray with the golden logo of HealthTech Corporation. It was her first day as a general services assistant, and the only thing repeating in her mind was, "Don't mess this up, Emily. Your family needs this." At 23, Emily had left behind her small town in the Midwest, carrying only a suitcase of simple clothes and a seemingly impossible dream, to attend nursing school at night while working during the day. The salary of $1,500 at HealthTech, along with meal vouchers and health insurance, was more than she had ever dreamed of earning. More importantly, the company offered scholarships for employees, something that could make her entry into college possible. When the elevator doors opened on the 37th floor, Emily felt as if she had entered another world. The Carrara marble floor reflected the LED lights embedded in the ceiling, creating an atmosphere of almost intimidating elegance. Abstract paintings by renowned artists adorned the smoked glass walls, and the subtle aroma of an expensive perfume lingered in the air conditioning that kept the temperature always perfect. "Emily, right?" The firm voice belonged to Dr. Patricia Anderson, the human resources director of the company, a 42-year-old woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and an Armani suit that cost more than Emily's annual salary. Ms. Thompson, who usually serves the executives, had a family emergency. "You'll be replacing her today at the quarterly meeting." "Yes, ma'am. You can count on me." Emily tried to sound confident, but her voice came out slightly trembling. "Listen carefully," Dr. Patricia approached, her Jimmy Choo heels echoing on the marble. "This is the most important meeting of the quarter. The CEO, Michael Anderson, will be present, along with the directors of all areas. One mistake, it could cost you your job, understood?" Emily swallowed hard and nodded. She had researched Michael Anderson the night before. At 35, he had transformed HealthTech from a small distributor of medical equipment into one of the largest corporations in the sector in North America. The son of Uruguayan immigrants, he grew up in East Side Manhattan and built his empire through a combination of relentless strategic vision and a reputation for never accepting excuses for failures. The conference room was even more impressive than the lobby. An oval mahogany table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by Italian leather chairs. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, where skyscrapers disappeared into the hazy afternoon skyline. The executives were already seated when Emily quietly entered, carrying the tray with china cups and a thermos of the special imported coffee the company served on important occasions. She had mentally rehearsed every move, serve from right to left, never turn her back to anyone, maintain a polite but not excessive smile. Everything was going perfectly until she reached the head of the table. Michael Anderson was focused on a tablet device, analyzing graphs with the intensity of someone accustomed to making decisions that moved millions of dollars. Emily had never seen someone emanate so much authority simply by their posture. He was tall, with dark brown hair always impeccably styled, and wore a navy blue Brooks Brothers suit that surely cost more than her 6-month salary. It was when she leaned in to serve the coffee that the tragedy happened. His tablet vibrated with a notification at the exact moment she extended her arm, and the unexpected movement caused her elbow to bump into the tray. The world seemed to slow down as she watched, horrified, the china cup fly toward Michael's chest. the hot, dark coffee spreading across his white dress shirt like a stain of ink. The silence that followed was deafening. 12 pairs of eyes turned to her, and Emily felt her face burn with embarrassment as the shards of the cup tinkled on the marble floor. Her legs trembled, and she immediately bent down, trying to gather the pieces with her hands, while whispering desperate apologies. "Sir, I'm so sorry, truly. It was an accident, I didn't mean to. Please forgive me." But when she lifted her eyes, expecting to find the fury that all employees feared, something completely different awaited her. Michael Anderson was watching her with an intensity that had nothing to do with anger. There was curiosity in those grey eyes, almost as if he were trying to decipher a riddle. For a moment that felt eternal, they locked eyes, he imposing even with the stained shirt, she kneeling on the floor, vulnerable and terrified. "Are you hurt?" His question caught her completely off guard. His voice was deep, but there was no irritation in it. Emily looked at her own hands and realized that one of the shards had cut her pinky finger. A drop of blood was trickling down, but she hadn't even felt the pain until he mentioned it. "No, sir. I'm fine." She quickly hid her hand behind her back, but he had already stood up. "Patricia," he called the HR director without taking his eyes off Emily, "get her a Band-Aid and bring me a spare shirt from the executive closet." "Mr. Anderson," Dr. Patricia intervened with a tone that tried to be professional but couldn't hide her irritation, "we can continue the meeting while I arrange for her replacement." "No," the word came out, with a firmness that brooked no discussion. "First, let's take care of the injury. The meeting can wait 5 minutes." Emily remained still, not understanding why the most feared CEO in New York was concerned about a minor cut on an employee's finger that had just ruined his expensive dress shirt. Around the table, the executives exchanged confused glances, equally surprised by their boss's unusual reaction. "What's your name?" Michael asked gently, extending his hand to help her up. Emily Johnson, sir." "Emily," he repeated as if testing how the name sounded in his voice. "You don't need to." "Oh, call me sir. Michael is fine." The suggestion caused an almost imperceptible murmur among those present. In 5 years at Health Tech, no one had ever heard Michael Anderson ask to be called by his first name by any operational level employee. When Emily finally accepted his hand to stand up, an electric current passed between them. She tried to mask the impact of that touch, but her eyes betrayed her, widening in surprise. He felt it too, she was sure, because there was an almost imperceptible pause before he released her hand. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Michael," she quickly corrected. "I'll make up for the damage to the shirt somehow, I promise." For the first time since she had entered the room, Michael smiled. It wasn't the political smile he wore in business meetings, but something genuine that completely transformed his expression. "Don't worry about it. Accidents happen." 15 minutes later, when Emily left the room after being dismissed by Dr. Patricia with a formal warning, she couldn't stop thinking about that smile. Throughout her journey back to the ground floor, while trying to process what had happened, one certainty hammered in her mind. Her life had changed at that moment, even though she still didn't know exactly how. On the 47th floor, Michael Anderson stood by the window for several minutes after the meeting ended, watching the hustle and bustle of the streets below. For the first time in years, his mind was not focused on spreadsheets, investments, or corporate strategies. Instead, he couldn't stop thinking about a pair of frightened brown eyes and how Emily had cared more about the damage she had caused him than about her own injury. Something had awakened inside him, something that had remained dormant for so long that he had forgotten. It existed. Emily descended the subway stairs at the Brooklyn station at 6:30 in the morning, carrying a worn backpack that had belonged to her father during college. The rush was already intense at that hour, with workers from all walks of life squeezing into the cars that would take them to New York's financial district. She settled into a corner, taking advantage of the 40-minute ride to review her notes on human anatomy, preparing for the exam she would have at college that night. 3 months had passed since the coffee incident, and Emily had managed to establish a routine that, although exhausting, was working. She woke up at 5 in the morning, took a quick shower in the small studio she shared with 2 co-workers in Brooklyn, and arrived at Health Tech before 7:30 to start her day. During lunch, she took advantage of the company library to study, and 3 times a week she rushed to St. Jude University, where she was enrolled in the evening nursing program. The scholarship had been approved 2 weeks after her first day, a surprise that still left her emotional. When she received the notification from the HR department, Emily had cried in the employee restroom, remembering all the nights she had stayed awake, calculating how she could save enough money to achieve her dream. "Good morning, Emily." The cheerful voice of Ms. Smith, the cleaning supervisor, greeted her as she passed through the building's turnstile. "How were your studies yesterday?" "Good morning, Ms. Smith. It was tough. We had a practical class in the lab until 10 at night, but it's worth it." Emily smiled genuinely. Ms. Smith had become a maternal figure for her, always interested in her academic progress and offering practical advice on how to survive in the corporate jungle of New York. "That's great, my dear. And be careful today, because that woman from HR has been in a bad mood since early. She must be on her PMS or something." Emily chuckled softly. Ms. Smith had a unique way of describing situations, but her intuition about the moods of executives was impressively accurate. Dr. Patricia Williams had been particularly cold with her since the incident, always finding small flaws in her work that would have previously gone unnoticed. The first part of the morning went by normally. Emily organized the supply cabinets on the 15th floor, cleaned the smaller conference rooms, and helped prepare the morning coffee for the executive team. It was repetitive work, but she made an effort to find satisfaction in each well-executed task, always remembering the greater goal that motivated her. At 10 o'clock, while organizing documents in the file on the 20th floor, a conversation caught her attention. 2 executive assistants were speaking in low voices near the elevators, but the marble corridor's acoustics made their words echo clearly. "Have you noticed that Michael has been leaving his office much more lately?" One of them, Fernanda, the CFO's assistant, asked. "I have," replied the other, Carla, who worked directly for the VP. "Last week he went down to the coffee shop 3 times, 3 when he always asks for coffee to be brought to his office. And yesterday I saw him in the corridor on the 15th floor, talking to the maintenance staff about who knows what. Since when does the CEO care about maintenance?" Emily felt a strange unease forming in her stomach. She tried to focus on the documents she was organizing, but she couldn't help but pay attention. "Dr. Patricia is furious about this," Fernanda continued. "Yesterday, I heard her talking on the phone with someone, complaining that his behavior is out of the established professional standards. Can you imagine?" "Well, if you want my opinion," Carla lowered her voice even more, "I think it has to do with that new cleaning girl, the one who spilled coffee on him on her first day." Emily's heart raced. She hid better behind the file cabinet, trying to control her breathing as she listened. "The Midwest girl? Emily something?" "That's the one. Didn't you notice? Every time he leaves the room lately, she's around. It could be a coincidence, but—" "Carla, for heaven's sake, you're delusional. Michael Anderson and a cleaning assistant, the man who dates models and heiresses. Impossible." "I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, something strange is going on, and Dr. Patricia definitely doesn't like it one bit." The 2 moved away, but Emily remained frozen behind the cabinet for several minutes, trying to process what she had just heard. Could it be possible that Michael Anderson was really paying attention to her? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Throughout the rest of the morning, Emily found herself observing the hallways differently, noticing details that had previously gone unnoticed. Then, around 11 o'clock, while she was cleaning the windows on the 20th floor, it happened. Emily. She turned quickly and almost knocked over the cleaning product bottle when she saw Michael Anderson standing just a few feet away. He was wearing a charcoal grey suit that accentuated his eyes, and he carried a leather briefcase that likely cost more than her monthly salary. "Mr. Michael," she corrected herself, remembering his preference. "Good morning." "Good morning. How's your finger? From that cut?" The question caught her off guard. It had been 3 months, and he still remembered the insignificant injury she had suffered. "It's great, thanks for asking. Didn't even leave a scar." "That's good." There was a strange pause, as if he wanted to say something more but didn't know how. "And how are your studies? I heard you got the scholarship." Emily felt her face heat up. "I did, yes. It was a wonderful surprise. Thank you so much for the opportunity the company offers." "It's important to invest in education," he replied, but there was something in his voice that suggested the conversation was about more than just corporate policies. "What course are you taking?" "Nursing, at St. Jude's, evening classes." "Nursing." He smiled, and Emily noticed it was the same genuine smile she had seen on that first day. "Excellent choice. The world needs more people dedicated to caring for others." "It's always been my dream," Emily replied, surprised at how easily the words flowed. "My dad had some health issues when I was a teenager, and the nurses at the hospital where he stayed were angels. I decided I wanted to be able to make a difference in people's lives in the same way." Something changed in Michael's expression when she mentioned her father. There was understanding there, a connection she hadn't expected to find. "What kind of health issues?" he asked gently. "Uncontrolled diabetes. He's a truck driver, or rather, he was. After the complications, he had to stop driving. It was tough for the family." "I can imagine. And how is he now?" "Better, managing with medication. But it was a big scare, and it changed a lot for us." Michael nodded slowly, as if he were processing very personal information. "Family is everything, isn't it?" "It is." Another silence stretched between them, but this time it wasn't. Uncomfortable. It was charged with something neither of them knew how to name. "Well," Michael finally said, "I won't keep you from your work any longer. I just wanted to check on you. Thank you for your concern." He turned to leave but stopped and looked back. "Emily?" "Yes?" "If you need anything for your studies, I mean, the company has resources, books, equipment, that kind of thing. Just talk to HR." After he left, Emily stood still for several minutes, still holding the cleaning cloth, trying to understand what had just happened. There was nothing explicit in the conversation, nothing that could be considered inappropriate, but there was an undercurrent of connection that she couldn't deny. During lunch, she sat alone in a corner of the coffee shop, eating the sandwich she had brought from home while reviewing her physiology notes. She was so focused on her studies that she didn't notice when someone approached her table. "Emily Johnson." She looked up and found Dr. Patricia Williams standing there, with an expression that tried to be friendly but couldn't hide an underlying coldness. "Dr. Patricia, good afternoon. May I sit for a moment?" Emily nodded, although a feeling of apprehension settled in her stomach. "How are you adapting to the company?" Dr. Patricia asked, settling into the plastic chair with a delicacy that contrasted with her usual authority. "Very well, thank you. I'm really enjoying the work." "That's good. And how are your studies? I heard the scholarship was approved." "It was indeed. I'm very grateful for the opportunity." Dr. Patricia smiled, but there was something calculating about that smile. It's important that you understand, Emily, that health tech invests in its employees because it believes in each person's potential. But that also means we expect exemplary behavior, both professionally and personally. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Of course, I always strive to do my best. I'm sure you do. I just want you to know that in a company of this size, it's important to maintain well-defined hierarchies, to avoid situations that could be misinterpreted. The message was being conveyed subtly, but Emily was not naive. Dr. Patricia knew about the interactions with Michael and was setting boundaries. I completely understand, Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Great. I'm sure you'll continue to be an exemplary employee. When Dr. Patricia stood up and left, Emily remained seated, staring at her notes without really seeing them. The message had been clear: keep your distance from the CEO or there would be consequences. But as she tried to refocus on her studies, a rebellious part of her mind couldn't stop thinking about Michael's grey eyes and the gentle way he had asked about her father. For the first time in her life, Emily found herself at the center of a situation that was far beyond her experience, unsure whether to follow prudence or what her heart was timidly beginning to whisper. The library of the Health Tech Corporation was located on the 18th floor, a quiet and sophisticated environment with cherrywood shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with technical books, specialized magazines, and corporate reports. It was the perfect place for Emily to study during lunch, away from the buzz of the coffee shop and the conversations of her colleagues that inevitably revolved around gossip and complaints. On that Thursday in March, the heat of New York was stifling even with the air conditioning, and Emily had chosen a table at the back of the library, near the window that offered a partial view of Central Park. Her pharmacology notes were spread out on the mahogany table, along with a sandwich of white cheese and tomato that would be her lunch, and a water bottle she had been reusing for weeks. She was so focused on trying to memorize the classifications of painkillers that she didn't notice when someone approached. It was only when a shadow fell over her papers that she looked up, finding Michael Anderson standing a few feet from her table. "Sorry to interrupt," he said softly, respecting the silence of the environment. "May I?" Emily felt her heart race, but she nodded positively, quickly gathering her notes to make space on the table. Michael sat down in the chair across from her, and she couldn't help but notice that he seemed slightly nervous, which was completely inconsistent with the image of absolute confidence he projected in meetings. "Studying pharmacology?" he asked, observing the title of the book she was trying to hide. "Yes, it's one of the hardest subjects for me. So much memorization, so many complicated names." Michael smiled. "Can I take a look?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then pushed the book in his direction. He flipped through a few pages, and his expression became thoughtful. "My adoptive mother was a nurse," he said unexpectedly. "She worked for 30 years at the General Hospital. She always said that pharmacology was about understanding the why before memorizing the what." "Your adoptive mother?" Emily asked gently, realizing he had shared something personal. "I grew up in an orphanage until I was 10. Ms. Thompson adopted me along with 2 other children. Michael paused, as if deciding how much he wanted to reveal. "She taught us that education was the only thing no one could take away from us." Emily felt a wave of understanding and admiration. "She sounds like a special person." She was. She passed away 5 years ago, pancreatic cancer. Ironically, all the drugs she knew so well couldn't save her. There was a genuine sadness in his voice that completely contrasted with the public image of the successful and relentless businessman. Emily felt the urge to reach out and touch him, to offer some kind of comfort, but she held back. "I'm sorry. Thank you." But the point is, she always said, Michael, every medicine has a story, a reason for existing. Learn the stories, and you'll never forget the names." Emily took the book back and looked at the page on painkillers. What kind of story? Michael leaned slightly forward, and Emily noticed that he smelled of a subtle and expensive cologne. For example, aspirin. It was discovered because someone noticed that people who chewed willow bark felt less pain. It took decades to isolate the active ingredient, but the story began with a simple observation. That's really interesting. It makes more sense than just memorizing that acetyl salicylic acid is a painkiller and anti-inflammatory. Exactly. They spent the next 20 minutes discussing pharmacology, and Emily was impressed with his knowledge. It wasn't just superficial information. Michael truly understood the concepts and had a way of explaining that made everything clearer. "How do you know so much about this?" she eventually asked. "When Ms. Thompson got sick, I read everything I could find about her treatments. I wanted to understand what the doctors were doing if there were other options." His voice faltered slightly. "In the end, knowledge wasn't enough, but at least I knew what was happening." Emily felt a pang in her chest. "You loved her very much. She saved my life, literally. If it weren't for her—" Michael didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. "And now you save companies," Emily said gently. Michael laughed, but there wasn't much joy in the sound. "It's not quite the same, isn't it? Health tech distributes medical equipment, right? How many lives are saved because of the products your company provides?" He looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "I never thought of it that way. Maybe you should." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, charged with an unexpected intimacy. Emily realized that this was the deepest conversation she had had in months, and the fact that it was happening with the CEO of the company where she worked felt surreal. "Michael," she said hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you here? I mean, in the library. I can't imagine you need to come in person to pick up reports." Michael seemed momentarily at a loss for words, and Emily saw a subtle blush rise on his neck. Well. Before he could respond, the library door opened, and Dr. Patricia Williams entered, her heels echoing on the wooden floor. Her eyes immediately found the table where Michael and Emily were sitting, and her expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Michael," she said, approaching with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I was looking for you. We have the video conference with the Japanese investors in 15 minutes. "Sure, Patricia, I'll be right up." Michael stood up, but his eyes remained on Emily. "Thank you for the conversation about, pharmacology reports." "Thank you for your help," Emily replied, understanding that they were both improvising a professional excuse for the meeting. After they left, Emily sat for several minutes, still processing the conversation. Michael had shown vulnerability, sharing intimate details of his life that he certainly didn't share with many people, and there was something in the way he looked at her, an intensity that went far beyond professional interest. The following weeks established a strange pattern. Michael appeared in the library about 3 times a week, always with some plausible excuse. He needed a specific report, was looking for data on a supplier, wanted to review old protocols, but he invariably ended up sitting at Emily's table, talking about topics that had nothing to do with work. He shared about his difficult childhood in the orphanage, how he learned to read on his own at 5 because it was his only way to escape reality, about his first job at 14 in a mechanic's shop where the owner let him sleep in the back in exchange for cleaning, about the night he decided he would be different, that he would build something that mattered. Emily, in turn, shared about life in small town, about waking up at 5 in the morning to help her father with deliveries before going to school, about her younger sister Julia, who was 15 and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, about the nights she stayed awake listening to her father cough in the next room, worried about the diabetes he stubbornly refused to manage properly. "Why nursing?" Michael asked one of those afternoons. "Because I want to care for people the way I wish someone had cared for my father," Emily replied without hesitation. "When he was hospitalized for the first time, I was 17 and terrified. I didn't understand anything that was happening. But there was a nurse, Sarah, who always explained the procedures, who held my hand when I cried, who taught me how to give him insulin." "And where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Emily smiled. "With my own clinic in the countryside. It doesn't have to be anything grand, but a place where people can receive quality care without having to travel to New York." "And why not New York? There are more opportunities here, better salaries." "Because my heart is there, because I know every family in the town, because I know where I can make a real difference." Emily paused. "And you? If you could do anything, be anyone, what would you choose?" Michael was silent for a long moment. "Honestly, sometimes I think about how a simpler life would be. Having a family, having dinner at home every night, getting to know my neighbors. Nothing is stopping you from having that." "It does. When you're at the top, Emily, everyone wants something from you. It's hard to know who is there for you and who is there for what you represent." The sadness in his voice was palpable, and Emily felt a genuine compassion for the man who had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. "Maybe you need to look in the right places," she said gently. "Maybe." He looked at her intensely. "Or maybe I've already found it." The comment hung in the air between them, laden with meanings neither was ready to confront directly. Emily felt her face heat up and turned her gaze to her books. It was at that moment they realized they were no longer alone in the library. On the other side of the shelves, Carla, the executive assistant, pretended to read a report, but her eyes were clearly focused on the table where they were talking. "I think I should go," Michael said quietly. "But Emily—" "Yes? Thank you. It's been a long time since I had a real conversation with someone." After he left, Emily tried to focus on her studies, but her mind was elsewhere. His words echoed in her head. "Maybe I've already found it." What exactly did he mean by that? As she organized her materials, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was getting involved in something much bigger than she could handle. But at the same time, for the first time in months, she felt truly connected to someone. And that was simultaneously the most wonderful and the most terrifying thing that had happened to her. The white envelope arrived on a Monday in April, personally delivered by an HR department employee during the morning break. Emily was organizing cleaning supplies on the 12th floor when the young intern found her, breathless from climbing several flights of stairs looking for her. "Emily Johnson, I have an official correspondence for you." She signed the protocol with slightly trembling hands, an inexplicable apprehension forming in her chest. Official correspondences were never good news for employees at her hierarchical level. Would it be a formal warning? Her mind immediately flew to the conversations in the library with Michael, to the curious glances she had noticed from other employees. She found a secluded corner in the women's restroom to open the envelope, and when she read the contents, her legs almost gave way. It wasn't a warning, it was much worse and much better at the same time. Official approval notice, full scholarship. Dear Ms. Emily Johnson, we are pleased to inform you that your application for a full scholarship has been approved by the Executive Board of Health Tech Corporation. The aid will cover 100% of the tuition for the nursing program, course materials, and includes an additional $500 monthly stipend for academic expenses. The approval was granted based on your exceptional score on the internal aptitude exam and a special recommendation from the Executive Board. For more information, please report to the HR department by Thursday, April 18th. Emily read the document 3 times before she could fully process the information. Full scholarship. $500 additional per month. It was more than she had ever dreamed of asking for, more than she knew the company typically offered. But one specific phrase troubled her. Special recommendation from the executive board. Which executive board? And why? For the rest of the day, Emily could hardly concentrate on her work. The news was wonderful. It represented financial security, the certainty that she could finish her studies without going into debt, maybe even send a little help to her family in the Midwest. But something didn't add up. It was Jessica, a co-worker who had become a close friend, who planted the first seed of real doubt. "Emily, have you heard of anyone else who has received a full scholarship here?" she asked during the afternoon break while they were having coffee in the small staff lounge in the basement. "I don't know. I don't talk much with people from other departments about these things." I asked Fernanda, who has been in HR for 4 years. She said the company offers partial scholarships, at most 50%, and that's it. A full scholarship with assistance. That's never happened. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm not trying to say anything, just—" Jessica hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Emily, are you sure nothing strange happened with this approval?" "Strange how?" "Well, after that day you spilled coffee on the boss, a lot of people commented that he seemed a bit different. And now, out of nowhere, you get a scholarship that no one else can." Jessica's words echoed in Emily's mind all night. On Thursday, when she showed up at the HR department as instructed, her anxiety was at its peak. Dr. Patricia welcomed her into her office with a smile that seemed forced, an open folder on the table, and an expression Emily couldn't decipher. "Emily, have a seat. Let's talk about your scholarship." "Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Patricia. I'm very grateful." "I'm sure you are." Dr. Patricia flipped through some papers in the folder. "You must be wondering how you received such a generous scholarship." Emily nodded slowly, not trusting her own voice. "The truth is that your approval went through an atypical process. Normally, scholarships are evaluated by a committee in the HR department based strictly on academic and financial criteria. And mine wasn't. Your application was approved directly by the executive board, more specifically by our CEO." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. By Michael. "Mr. Anderson, yes." Dr. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying Emily's reaction carefully. "He personally reviewed your documentation and approved the full scholarship, along with the additional assistance." "But why? He hardly knows me." "That's an excellent question, Emily. One I would also like to know the answer to." Dr. Patricia's tone had subtly changed, becoming colder, more investigative. "Emily, I'll be direct with you. In 15 years of working in HR, I have never seen Mr. Anderson personally involved in matters concerning operational-level employees. Never. And suddenly he not only approves your scholarship, but creates a special program that didn't exist before." Emily felt nausea beginning to form. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. What kind of relationship do you have with Mr. Anderson?" "None. I mean—" Emily stumbled over her words. "We talked a few times in the library about studies, nothing more." "Conversations about studies." Dr. Patricia jotted something down in her notebook. "How often?" "I don't know. A few times. He would show up when I was studying. He would show up. The CEO of a $2 billion corporation casually showed up to talk about studies with a cleaning assistant. When put that way, Emily realized how absurd the situation sounded. And suspicious. Dr. Patricia, I swear there's nothing inappropriate going on. I would never, it would be impossible. Emily, dear. Dr. Patricia leaned forward, her voice taking on an almost maternal tone. You are a beautiful, intelligent young woman. It's natural for men to be interested in you, even men in positions of power. But that's not it. It's nothing like that. Then how do you explain a scholarship that has never been offered before, personally approved by someone who, by your own words, hardly knows you? Emily remained silent because she honestly didn't know how to explain. The conversations in the library had seemed so natural, so spontaneous, but when viewed from the outside, from Dr. Patricia's perspective, listen, Emily, I'm not accusing you of anything, but I need you to understand the delicate position this puts us in. An employee receiving special treatment can create a toxic work environment, generate rumors, and even expose the company to legal issues. What do you want me to do? For now, nothing. The scholarship is approved, and it would be more problematic to revoke it than to keep it, but I need you to be very careful from now on. Avoid situations that could be misinterpreted. Maintain appropriate professional distance. Emily left Dr. Patricia's office with her head spinning and her heart heavy. The scholarship that should have been a cause for celebration now seemed laden with implications she hadn't considered. She had accepted without question Michael's appearances in the library, the intimate conversations, the special attention. But now she realized how all of that must look to others. Worse still, a part of her wondered if Dr. Patricia was right. Had Michael really approved the scholarship based solely on her academic merits? Or were there other motivations? That night, in her small apartment in Brooklyn, Emily called home for the first time in weeks. She needed to hear the familiar voice of her sister Julia to anchor herself in something real and true. Emily, I've missed you. How are things in the big city? Complicated, Ju, very complicated. Complicated how? Problems at work? At school? Emily hesitated. How to explain to a 15-year-old the moral complexity of her situation? Ju, if someone helped you, imagine you were given an incredible opportunity, but you found out that this person might have other interests. What would you do? It depends. Is the help genuine? Does it truly benefit you? Yes, a lot. And are the other interests bad? Do they harm anyone? Emily thought for a moment. I don't know. Maybe they aren't bad, but they could be complicated. Emily, you always taught me that life isn't black and white. Maybe this person is helping you because they see your potential, and maybe also because they like you. Can't it be both? The simplicity of Julia's observation hit her like a bolt of lightning. Why did it have to be one or the other? Why couldn't Michael have approved the scholarship because she deserved it and because he cared about her? But even accepting that possibility, the more important question remained: what to do about it? Emily spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling of the small room she shared with two roommates, trying to decide what her next step would be. By morning, she had come to a conclusion. She needed to talk to Michael directly, clarify things, and set clear boundaries. She didn't yet know that this decision would lead her to the most intense and revealing confrontation of her life. Friday dawned with a light rain that made New York even grayer and more suffocating. Emily arrived at work an hour earlier than usual, determined to have the conversation she had been postponing for 3 days since her meeting with Dr. Patricia. She had mentally rehearsed what she would say, how she would maintain a professional tone, and how she would establish clear boundaries without sounding ungrateful or rude. The 37th floor was practically empty at that hour. Only a few executive assistants had arrived, and Michael usually came in around 7:30. Emily knew this because Involuntarily, she had started to notice his patterns during the months she had worked in the building. She positioned herself discreetly near the executive elevators, pretending to organize a supply cart while she waited. When she finally heard the familiar ding of the private elevator at 7:35, her heart raced. Michael stepped out of the elevator, talking on his cell phone in English, discussing what seemed to be a complex negotiation with Asian suppliers. He wore a navy suit that accentuated his eyes and carried a brown leather briefcase that Emily had learned to recognize as a sign that he had important meetings scheduled for the morning. He saw her immediately, and something in his expression changed. He quickly ended the call and approached her with a smile that was both cheerful and slightly confused. "Emily, are you okay? Is something wrong?" The genuine concern in his voice almost made her lose her courage, but Emily forced herself to maintain the determined posture she had practiced. "Michael, I need to talk to you. It's important." He looked around, noticing that they were being observed by two executive assistants who pretended to be busy with their computers. "Sure, let's go to my office." "No," Emily said quickly. "I don't think that's appropriate. We can talk right here. It will be quick." Michael frowned, clearly confused by Emily's sudden formality. "All right. What is it about?" Emily took a deep breath, trying to remember the words she had rehearsed. "It's about the scholarship. I found out that you personally approved it, and I need to understand why." Michael's expression became cautious. "Why is this a problem? Weren't you happy with the approval?" "Of course I'm happy, but—" Emily struggled to find the right words. "Michael, full scholarships have never been offered before at the company. Why did they create a special program for me?" "Because you deserve it. Your grades are excellent. Your dedication is evident." "Is that all?" Emily interrupted, her voice louder than she intended. "Because when the CEO personally approves a benefit that has never existed for an employee, he coincidentally runs into several times a week at the library, people start to talk." Michael's face hardened slightly. "What kind of things are they saying?" "You know what kind of things." There was a moment of tense silence between them. Emily could see the executive assistants trying to disguise their interest in the conversation, and she realized that choosing the public corridor had been a mistake. But it was too late to turn back now. "Emily," Michael said quietly, "if you're implying that there's something inappropriate—" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly." Emily felt courage coming from somewhere deep within her. "Why did you really approve my scholarship?" Michael looked at her for a long moment, and Emily saw various emotions pass across his face. Surprise, hurt, frustration, and finally, something that seemed like resignation. "Because you are the most dedicated and honest person I've met in years. Because when I talk to you, I don't feel like you're trying to impress me or get something from me. Because I believe you will make a difference in many people's lives, and I wanted to help that happen." "And is that all?" Michael hesitated, and in that hesitation, Emily found her answer. "No," he finally said. "It's not just that." Emily felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "What else?" "Because in the 3 months I've worked here, you've reminded me of who I was before I became this." He gestured vaguely toward the luxurious building around them. "Because when I talk to you, I don't have to be the relentless CEO. I can just be Michael." The brutal honesty of his response left her momentarily speechless. There was a vulnerability in his voice that she had never heard before. "That's exactly the problem," Emily said, finding her voice again. "You are the CEO. I am an executive assistant. You can't just be Michael with me, because that creates problems for both of us." "Problems like what?" "Like people thinking I'm sleeping with the boss to get ahead." like the HR director interrogating me about our relationship, like other employees looking at me like I'm an opportunist. Michael looked genuinely shocked. Did someone say, "Is this for you?" They didn't have to say it directly. The insinuations were enough. "Emily, I never—" Michael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that she had learned to recognize. "It was never my intention to put you in an uncomfortable position. I know it wasn't intentional, but it happened anyway." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging between them like a storm cloud. "What do you want me to do?" Michael finally asked. "I want you to stop showing up at the library when I'm studying. I want our relationship to be strictly professional from now on, and I want you to understand that I will keep the scholarship because I need it, but I will prove that I deserve it on my own." Michael looked at her as if she had just slapped him in the face. "All right, if that's what you want. It's what needs to be. I understand." His voice had taken on the formal and cold tone he used in business meetings. "Anything else?" Emily hesitated. There was a part of her that wanted to say she would miss their conversations, that she had enjoyed getting to know the man behind the corporate facade, that the stories about his childhood and adoptive mother had touched her deeply. But she said none of that. "No, I think everything is clear. Perfectly clear." Michael turned to leave, but stopped and looked back. "Emily." "Yes?" "For what it's worth, I never doubted that you deserved the scholarship. Your approval would have happened eventually with or without my intervention. I just expedited a process that was already in motion." "Why didn't you say that before?" "Because I wanted to make sure you didn't feel obligated to anything." The irony of the situation did not escape Emily. He had tried to protect her from feeling obligated, but he had created exactly the situation she was now facing. "Thank you for clarifying that." Michael nodded briefly and headed to his office, his footsteps echoing in the marble hallway. Emily stood still for several minutes, staring at the closed door of his office and trying to process what had just happened. She had achieved what she wanted: clear boundaries, a strictly professional relationship, clarifications about the scholarship. So why did she feel like she had lost something important? For the rest of the day, Emily tried to focus on work, but her mind kept returning to the expression on Michael's face when she had laid down the rules. Was it hurt, disappointment, or perhaps relief at finally having things clarified? It was only when she got home that night that she realized she had spent the entire day hoping to see him again, maybe in the hallways or the elevator. But he had completely respected her request. There were no casual encounters, no unexpected appearances, and that should have made her feel better. Instead, for the first time since arriving in New York, Emily felt deeply alone. That night, while studying pharmacology at her small desk in the shared apartment, she found herself thinking about Michael's explanations of aspirin and willow bark. The stories behind the medications made much more sense than the mechanical memorization, and now every complicated name would remind her of him. Emily slammed the book shut harder than necessary, irritated with herself. She had made the right decision, set appropriate boundaries, protected her reputation and professional integrity. So why did it feel like she had just thrown away the most precious thing she had found in New York? May arrived with unusually high temperatures for the New York autumn, as if the city refused to accept that winter was approaching. Emily had established a new routine in the 2 weeks following her confrontation with Michael. She arrived at work earlier to avoid the times he walked through the hallways, changed her lunch schedule to avoid possible encounters in the library, and dedicated herself to work with an almost obsessive intensity. The strategy was working. There were no more casual encounters, no more intimate conversations, no more loaded glances. Michael had completely respected the boundaries she had set, and Emily should have been satisfied. But she wasn't. His absence was a constant presence in her mind. Every time she entered the library and saw the empty tables, every time she passed the 47th floor on her cleaning tasks, every time she heard his name mentioned in conversations among executive assistants, Emily felt a strange pang in her chest, something between relief and an inexplicable melancholy. It was Jessica who first noticed the change. "Emily, you've been acting strange lately," she said during the afternoon break on an especially hot Thursday. They were sitting in the small outdoor area of the building, enjoying the rare breeze coming from the direction of Central Park. More quiet, more, I don't know, distant. "I'm fine, just tired. The college exams are tough." "Is that all?" Jessica observed her with the perceptive gaze of someone who grew up sharing an apartment with 4 sisters and knew how to recognize when someone was hiding something. "Because I noticed you've kind of disappeared from the library at lunchtime. I've been preferring to study at home. It's quieter." "Uh-huh." Jessica didn't seem convinced. "And it has nothing to do with the fact that certain people stopped showing up there?" Emily felt her face heat up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Emily, I work on the 18th floor. I saw when the boss went down to the library, and now I don't see him anymore. And you coincidentally changed your schedule. 2 plus 2. Jessica, please." "Hey, I'm not judging. Actually, I think you were smart. Too complicated a situation, too much difference between you two. Better to keep your distance." Jessica's words, spoken with the best of intentions, caused a tightening in Emily's chest. "Complicated? How?" "Oh, Emily, you know, he billionaire, powerful, probably has women lining up behind him, and you are, well, you. Not that there's anything wrong with you, Jessica." She hurried to clarify, "But they are completely different worlds." "I know that. And besides, men like him aren't seriously interested in women like us. There might be a fling, but when it comes to marriage, they choose someone from the same social class. That's how it works." Emily nodded, pretending to agree, but Jessica's words echoed in her mind for the rest of the day. Men like him aren't seriously interested in women like us. Could it be true? The conversations in the library had felt so genuine, so connected. But perhaps Jessica was right. Maybe Emily had romanticized something that, for Michael, was just a fleeting pastime. The confirmation of her worst suspicions came from an unexpected source. The following Friday, Emily was organizing cleaning supplies in the basement when she heard familiar voices echoing down the hallway. 2 executive assistants were coming down the stairs, animatedly chatting, their voices easily carrying in the enclosed space. "Did you see the photos on the magazine's website?" It was Carla, the assistant to the VP. "I did. Wow, she is really beautiful, and it seems like it's getting serious this time." Emily instinctively hid behind a shelf, her heart starting to race for reasons she didn't understand. It makes sense, right? Isabella Johnson has everything he's looking for: a traditional family, European education, her own fashion business. And it's obvious she's not after his money. "Perfect to be the first lady of the health tech corporation," Carla laughed. "Can you imagine the charity events they'll organize together?" From what his team mentioned, they've known each other for years, but only started seeing each other romantically in the last few weeks. It seems he finally decided to open up to something serious. Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Michael was dating someone suitable, from his social class with the right pedigree. "It was about time," Carla continued. "He's been acting a bit strange lately, you know? More distant, spending a lot of time out of the office. Dr. Patricia mentioned she was worried about some inappropriate distractions. Well, now he seems focused on the right things. Isabella Johnson is exactly the type of woman a man in his position should be dating. The voices faded away, but Emily remained hidden for several minutes, trying to process what she had heard. Michael was dating, not just seeing someone, but starting something that seemed serious, with a woman everyone considered perfect for him. And she was foolish for feeling betrayed, because after all, there was nothing between them. She had set the boundaries herself, made it clear that she only wanted a professional relationship. But if that was what she wanted, why did it hurt so much? That night, against her better judgment, Emily searched for photos. Online, Isabella Johnson was everything the assistants had described: blonde, elegant, with the kind of sophisticated beauty that came from good genes and expensive care. In the photos from the charity event where they were photographed together, she and Michael looked perfectly matched. He imposing in a tuxedo, she stunning in a dress that probably cost more than Emily's annual salary. They seemed to belong to the same world, speaking the same silent language of the elite in Manhattan. It was exactly the kind of relationship that made sense for someone like Michael Anderson. Emily slammed the laptop, shut harder than necessary, irritated with herself for looking, for caring, for feeling a pang of jealousy she had no right to feel. The following days passed in a haze of routine work and intense study. Emily dove into her books with fierce dedication, as if she could study away the confusing feelings that tormented her. Her grades improved even more, and the professors began to comment on her exceptional progress. But it was during a practical first aid class, 3 weeks after discovering about Isabella, that Emily finally had to confront the truth about her own feelings. The instructor had asked the students to form pairs to practice CPR, and Emily was focusing on chest compressions when her partner, a classmate named Sandra, started to chat. "Emily, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure," Emily replied, keeping pace with the compressions. "Have you ever fallen for someone completely impossible?" The question caught her so off guard that Emily almost lost count. "Why do you ask?" "Because you have a way about you. I don't know, like you're carrying something heavy, and I recognize that because I've been there." Emily stopped the compressions and looked at Sandra. "And what did you do?" "I learned the hard way that love isn't about wanting someone who makes sense. It's about not being able to stop thinking about someone, even when you know you should." The words hit Emily like a bolt of clarity. That was exactly what was happening. She hadn't set boundaries with Michael because it was the professionally correct thing to do. She had set them because she was afraid to admit that she was falling for him. And now, weeks later, she realized that the boundaries hadn't worked. She still thought about him constantly, still missed their conversations, still wondered how he was, if he was happy with Isabella, if he ever thought of her. "What did you do about it?" Emily asked softly. "I told the truth, to him and to myself. It didn't work out in the end. He really was out of my league, but at least I didn't spend the rest of my life wondering, what if?" That night, Emily walked the streets of Brooklyn late into the night, trying to sort out her thoughts. Discovering that she was in love with Michael was both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because she finally understood why she had felt so lost in recent weeks. Terrifying because now she had to decide what to do with that information. Michael was dating someone else, someone suitable, someone who made sense. And even if he weren't, there would still be the issue of social differences, professional implications, all the practical reasons why they couldn't, as they walked together. But while strolling through the streets illuminated by the bars and restaurants of the bohemian neighborhood, Emily remembered Sandra's words, "At least I won't be wondering what if for the rest of my life." Maybe it was time to stop running and face the truth, both about her feelings and about what had really happened between her and Michael during those months in the library. Perhaps it was time for an honest conversation, even if it hurt, even if it changed nothing. Maybe it was time to find out if she was alone in these feelings, or if Michael had also felt something real during those afternoons that now seemed to belong to another life. The summer in New York had finally arrived with full force in early December, bringing with it the torrential storms that were a hallmark of the season. Emily was organizing files in the basement of the Health Tech Corporation when the first thunder rumbled through the building, followed by the sudden darkening of the sky that turned the afternoon into something close to night. It had been almost 2 months since she discovered Michael's relationship with Isabella Johnson, 2 months trying to convince herself that she had made the right choice by keeping her distance, 2 months pretending not to care when she saw his name in business newspapers, or when she heard the executive assistants commenting on the social events they attended together. The routine had become her ally. Work, study, sleep, repeat. Her college grades remained excellent, her professional performance had been praised in the last evaluation, and she was saving enough to help her family in small town. Everything was working perfectly on paper. But when she was alone, especially during the long study nights, her thoughts invariably returned to those afternoons in the library, to the stories Michael had shared, to the vulnerability he had shown when talking about his adoptive mother and his childhood in the orphanage. That Thursday, Emily was alone in the basement archive, organizing old documents that needed to be digitized when the storm hit with full force. The sound of rain against the small, tall windows of the basement was deafening, punctuated by the thunder that made the entire building vibrate. It was at 3:47 p.m. when everything went dark. The blackout was instant and total. The lights went out, the air conditioning died with an electronic sigh, and Emily found herself plunged into the absolute darkness of the underground archive. Only the dim emergency light near the door offered minimal clarity. She tried to leave immediately, but discovered that the door had automatically locked, a security system that activated during power outages to protect confidential documents. Emily grabbed her phone to use as a flashlight and tried to call security, but there was no signal in the basement. Perfect, she murmured to herself, resigning to wait until someone noticed her absence or the power came back. It was after 20 minutes, when she was starting to seriously worry about being trapped there all night, that she heard footsteps in the hallway and a familiar voice calling her name. "Emily! Emily, are you there?" It was Michael. "I'm here," she shouted back, moving closer to the door. The door locked when the power went out. "It's okay, I'll fix this." Emily heard muffled conversation outside, Michael talking to someone from security about emergency codes and backup systems. After a few minutes that felt eternal, she heard the click of the electronic lock being released. The door opened, revealing Michael in the frame, illuminated by the light of his phone. Even in the dim light, Emily could see the relief on his face when he found her. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping into the archive. "I am. Thank you for finding me." "How did you know I was here?" "Ms. Smith said she saw you heading down here before the storm. When the power went out and you didn't respond on the cleaning crew's radio, I thought I'd check." The genuine concern in his voice touched Emily more than it should have. "Is the elevator working?" "No, nothing electronic is working, and according to security, it may take a few hours to restore power. The building's electrical system was hit by lightning." As if to confirm his words, another thunderclap echoed through the building, followed by the intensified sound of the rain. Few hours. Emily looked around the dark archive. Are we going to be stuck here? It seems so. The door will automatically lock again if we leave, and the emergency stairs are blocked by security protocol during storms. The reality of the situation began to sink in. She was trapped alone, with Michael in the underground archive during a storm that could last for hours. It was exactly the kind of situation she had spent months trying to avoid. "Well," Michael said, trying to keep a light tone, "at least we have light." He showed his phone and a small flashlight he had brought from security. They settled on the floor, using some empty boxes for back support. The space wasn't large, about 10 feet by 12, and the forced proximity created an intimacy that Emily tried to ignore. For several minutes, they sat in silence, listening to the storm outside. Michael fiddled with his phone, presumably trying to find a signal or check updates about the power. Emily pretended to study her notes in the dim light, but in reality, she was hyper-aware of every movement he made, the sound of his breathing, the subtle scent of his cologne. "Emily," Michael finally said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you happy with how things are between us now?" The question caught her completely off guard. "What do you mean?" "You got what you wanted. Clear boundaries. Strictly professional relationship. Is it working for you?" Emily hesitated. It was a simple question that required an honest answer, and in the darkness of the archive, with just the two of them and the sound of the storm, polite lies seemed impossible. "No," she admitted softly. "It's not working." Michael turned to look directly at her. "Why not?" "Because Emily," Emily struggled to find the right words. "Because I miss our conversations. I miss getting to know you, the real Michael, not the CEO. I miss having someone to talk to about anything." "I miss it too." The words came out in a whisper, but in the quiet of the archive they echoed like a shout. "You do?" Emily asked, her voice equally low. "Every day. Those conversations in the library were—" Michael paused, searching for words. "They were the best part of my days. For the first time in years, I felt normal, like a real person, not just a corporate function." "But you're dating now, Isabella." Michael fell silent for a long moment. "How did you know about Isabella?" "People talk. New York is a small city when it comes to the social elite." "And what exactly are people saying?" Emily forced herself to keep her voice neutral. "That you two are perfect together, that she has everything you're looking for in a partner, that you've finally settled on something serious." Michael let out a bitter laugh. "That's what everyone thinks, really. Isn't it true? Isabella is a wonderful person," Michael said carefully. "Smart, successful, elegant. Exactly. The kind of woman everyone expects me to date. But when I'm with her, I feel like I'm playing a role, the role of the successful CEO with the appropriate girlfriend. We talk about business, social events, trips to exotic destinations, all very civilized, very proper." Emily felt a strange pang in her chest. "And what's wrong with that?" "Nothing, I suppose. It's exactly what I should want." Michael leaned back against the box behind him. "But I can't stop thinking about a cleaning assistant who challenged me to see my work as a way to save lives, who listened to me talk about my adoptive mother without judging me, who chose to study nursing because she wanted to care for people the way she wished someone had cared for her sick father." Emily's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Michael, you asked me why I approved your scholarship. The whole truth is that I wanted to give you all the tools you need to achieve your dreams, because I believe the world needs people like you, but also because I was looking for an excuse to spend more time talking to you." "Why didn't you say that back then?" "Because I knew how it would sound. The powerful CEO interested in the humble employee, all the bad cliches you two imagined." "But wasn't that it?" Michael looked her directly in the eyes. "It was at first. I won't lie. The first time I noticed you was physically. You're beautiful, Emily. But that's not why I kept coming back to the library." "So why did you keep coming back?" "Because when you talked about your family, your dreams, your hopes, I saw an integrity that I don't find in my world. Because you made me laugh for real. Because when I was with you, I remembered who I wanted to be when I grew up." Michael's words echoed in the small space, laden with an honesty that cut through all the complications and social protocols. "And now?" Emily asked. "What happens now? Now you tell me if there's any chance you feel something like what I feel for you." Emily closed her eyes, trying to organize the feelings she had spent months denying. In the darkness of the archive, with the storm raging outside and just the two of them in the world, she finally found the courage to face the truth. Michael, for the past 2 months, I tried to convince myself that you were just a distraction from my goals, that our worlds are too incompatible, that it would be crazy to allow myself to feel anything for you. And did you succeed? No. The word came out as a sigh. I couldn't stop thinking about you, about your stories, the way your eyes sparkled when you talked about your adoptive mother, the way you really listened to me when I spoke. I miss you every day. Emily, but that doesn't change the fact that we come from different worlds, that you have an appropriate girlfriend, that I'm just a... No, Michael interrupted her firmly. Never say just when referring to yourself. You are the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. I'm a cleaning assistant from a small town. You are someone who left your family to pursue a dream of helping others, who works 2 jobs to pay for school, who cares more about the well-being of her sick father than her own comfort. You are amazing. The tears Emily had held back for months finally began to fall. But what about Isabella, and the complications, and all the reasons this can't work? Michael moved closer until their knees touched. Isabella and I broke up last week. You broke up? It was unfair to her to continue a relationship when my heart was somewhere else. She deserves someone who loves her completely. And the other complications? They're real. I won't lie about that. It's going to be hard, complicated, and some people won't understand. But Emily... He reached out and gently touched her face. You are worth all the complications in the world. And then, there in the dark archive, with the sound of the storm outside, Michael leaned in and kissed her. It was a soft kiss at first, almost hesitant, as if he were giving her the chance to pull away. But Emily didn't pull away. Instead, she responded to the kiss with all the intensity of the feeling she had held back for months. When they finally separated, Michael rested his forehead against hers. Emily, I don't know how we're going to make this work, but I want to try. I want to see if we can build something real together, even knowing all the obstacles, especially because, of them, the best things in life are worth fighting for. And as the storm continued outside, Emily allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, love could truly overcome the differences between 2 worlds. The power returned 3 hours later, at 9:15 in the evening, but for Emily and Michael, the world had already changed completely. When the fluorescent lights of the basement archive flickered back to life, with an electric hum, they instinctively pulled away, as if the light could undo the magic of what had happened in the darkness. Well, Michael said, adjusting the tie that had loosened during their hours trapped, it seems our temporary confinement has come to an end. Emily organized her notes with slightly trembling hands, still processing the intensity of the last few hours. The kiss had been just the beginning. They had spent the rest of the time talking in a way they never had before, without barriers, without social protocols, just 2 people discovering that what they felt was real and mutual. Michael, she said hesitantly, what happens now? When we leave here, how? Slowly, he replied, understanding her concern. Let's take it easy. I don't want to put you in an even more complicated position. They ascended in the elevator that was finally working in a silence charged with expectation and nervousness. When the doors opened on the ground floor, the contrast with the basement was striking. Security personnel were circulating, checking systems. Some employees who had been trapped in the building were chatting in small groups, and corporate normalcy was being quickly restored. "Emily!" Miss Smith appeared from a side corridor, clearly relieved. Thank God you're okay. We were worried when we couldn't locate you. I was stuck in the basement archive. The door locked when the power went out. And Mr. Anderson found you, Miss Smith noted, looking between the two with a perceptive expression. What luck! Yes, Michael said diplomatically. Fortunately, we managed to resolve the situation. Emily noticed that even this trivial interaction was being observed by several people in the lobby. Two executive assistants in the corner pretended to check their phones while clearly paying attention to the conversation, and a security guard was jotting something down on his clipboard with excessive interest. Well, now that everyone is safe, I think it's best we head home, Miss Smith said. Practically. What a terrible storm. The traffic out there must be a mess. Emily nodded in agreement. But when she turned to say goodbye to Michael, she noticed he was looking out the large glass window of the reception area with a worried expression. What is it? She asked quietly. The highway is completely flooded, Michael said. And from what I'm seeing on the traffic app, all the main roads are blocked. You'll have trouble getting home. Emily looked out the window and saw he was right. The rain had eased, but the streets around the building were inundated and traffic was at a standstill. I can offer you a ride, Michael continued. I have a driver with a car prepared for flooding. That's not necessary, Emily said quickly, aware they were being watched. We can take an Uber when it gets better. Emily, it could take hours, and it will be impossible to get an Uber in these conditions. Ms. Smith, who had been following the conversation, interjected with her characteristic pragmatism. Mr. Anderson, if you don't mind, it would be a great help. I live on the west side and Emily in Brooklyn. They're on the same route. Michael nodded. Of course, no problem at all. 15 minutes later, Emily found herself in the back seat of a luxury sedan, next to Ms. Smith, while Michael sat in the front with the driver. The contrast between the luxurious car and her simple life was striking. The leather seats were softer than any furniture she owned, and the digital controls looked like something out of a spaceship. What a beautiful car, Mrs. Smith commented, clearly impressed. It's my first time in something like this. It's armored, the driver, a man named John in his 50s, explained proudly. It can handle any flooding, any security situation. Emily tried not to think about the fact that Michael lived in a world where armored cars were necessary, where personal security was a constant concern. It was yet another reminder of the fundamental differences between their realities. The trip to the west side took nearly an hour, navigating alternative routes to avoid the flooded areas. Miss Smith and John kept a lively conversation about football and the challenges of New York traffic, while Emily and Michael exchanged occasional glances through the rearview mirror. When they dropped Ms. Smith off at her simple but well-kept building, she bid farewell with effusive thanks. Mr. Anderson, you are a gentleman. Emily, dear, see you Monday, and watch out for those floods. Once they were alone in the car, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Michael turned to the back. Can I sit back there with you? Emily nodded, and he moved to the seat beside her. The proximity brought back all the feelings from the hours they had spent in the archive, the connection, the intimacy, the certainty that something fundamental had changed between them. John, Michael said to the driver, could you give us a few minutes? Maybe grab a coffee at that bakery over there? Sure, Mr. Michael. I'll wait right there on the corner. Once they were alone, Michael turned fully to Emily. How are you feeling? About everything that happened today? Emily considered the question carefully. Confused, happy, terrified, all at once. That's exactly how I feel too. Michael, are you sure about this? About us? Because once we start, there won't be a way back without consequences. What kind of consequences are you thinking about? Emily looked out the window at the dark, wet street. For me, I'll probably lose. My job eventually, no matter how discreet we try to be. For you, it could affect your professional reputation, cause issues with the board, complicate your social relationships. And yet you want to try? I do, Emily replied without hesitation. As scary as it is, I want to. Michael smiled, the first truly relaxed smile she had seen from him all day. Then let's establish some boundaries. Emily took a deep breath. Basic rules. First, at work, we are strictly professional. No public displays of affection. No personal conversations where others can hear. I agree. Second, let's take it slow. I won't put you in a situation where you feel pressured or uncomfortable. And third, total honesty between us. If something is bothering you, if you want to stop, if I'm being an idiot about something, you tell me immediately. Emily extended her hand. Deal. Michael shook her hand, but instead of letting go, he brought it close to his face and gently kissed her fingers. Emily, I want you to know that this is not just a fling for me. I don't know exactly where this will lead, but I know it's real. It is for me too. They stayed like that for a few moments, hands intertwined, processing the magnitude of what they had decided. The sound of rain on the car roof and the city lights created a bubble of intimacy that seemed to temporarily shield them from the outside world. When Mr. Johnson returned, Michael discreetly moved back to the front seat, but Emily could feel that something fundamental had changed. There was an electric current between them now, a constant awareness of each other that hadn't existed before. For the rest of the drive to Brooklyn, they talked about neutral things. The weather, weekend plans, a book Emily was reading for one of her classes. But there was an underlying layer to every word, a secret code that only the two of them understood. When they arrived at Emily's building, Michael got out of the car to walk her to the door, a gesture that might have seemed merely courteous, but she knew it was more than that. "Thank you for the ride," she said formally, aware that Mr. Johnson was watching. "It was a pleasure. I hope you can rest after such an eventful day." Definitely, but as she searched for her keys in her bag, Michael leaned in slightly and said softly, "Can I call you this weekend? Maybe we can talk more about the projects we discussed today." Emily smiled. "I would love to discuss those projects with you." "Great. Have a good night, Emily." "Good night, Michael." She climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her small apartment with her heart racing. When she entered the room she shared with 2 roommates, she found it empty. They had gone to spend the weekend in the Hamptons. Emily sat on the small bed and looked around the modest space, the peeling walls, the plywood wardrobe, the makeshift study table made of 2 boards and 4 bricks. It was a stark contrast to Michael's world of luxury, but that night, for the first time in months, she felt like she finally knew where she was going. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I hope you made it home safely. I can't wait to talk more about our projects. M." Emily smiled and typed back, "I did. I can't wait either. E." As she prepared for bed, Emily reflected on how a blackout of a few hours had completely changed the course of her life. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know how they would navigate the complexities of such an unexpected relationship. But she knew one thing for sure. For the first time since arriving in New York, she didn't feel alone anymore. 3 months after the blackout, Emily had discovered that loving in secret was simultaneously the most wonderful and the most torturous thing in the world. The weekends had become precious. Discreet meetings in coffee shops away from the central area, morning walks in Central Park before the crowds, long phone conversations during the early hours when neither of them could sleep. Michael had revealed himself to be completely different, away from the corporate environment. He was funny, caring, and surprisingly insecure in some aspects. He had taken Emily to visit the grave of his adoptive mother at the cemetery, where she learned that he had been bringing flowers every month for 5 years. He had shared recurring nightmares of returning to the orphanage, about how he still sometimes woke up feeling hungry, even when surrounded by abundance. Emily, in turn, had shared fears she had never verbalized: the terror of not graduating from college, the guilt of leaving her family to pursue her dreams, the constant feeling of being an imposter in the corporate world. Michael listened to everything with an attention that made her feel truly seen for the first time in her life. But keeping the relationship hidden was taking its toll. At work, they barely looked at each other directly. When their roles put them in the same environment, they maintained a rigid professionalism that bordered on hostility. Emily had become a master at feigning indifference when Michael walked by in the hallways, while he developed an impressive ability to completely ignore her presence in meetings. The constant tension was affecting them both. Emily had lost weight. Her concentration in her studies was wavering, and she often found herself on the verge of tears for no apparent reason. Michael, according to comments she overheard from executive assistants, was more irritable at work, less patient with subordinates, and had cancelled several social commitments. It was on a March morning, while Emily was cleaning the 23rd floor, that everything began to unravel. She was organizing a conference room when she heard familiar voices in the hallway. Dr. Patricia talking to someone in a low but urgent tone. Emily had no intention of eavesdropping, but when she heard her own name, she froze. "The situation with Emily Johnson is becoming unsustainable," Dr. Patricia said. "In what sense?" The other voice belonged to Mr. Edward Smith, the executive VP. "Edward, haven't you noticed the changes in Michael's behavior over the past few months? The unexplained absences, the irritability, the fact that he has completely withdrawn from his usual social commitments. I have noticed. I thought it was work stress." "It's not work stress. It's that..." "Girl?" Emily felt her blood run cold. "Patricia, you're being paranoid." Michael ended. "Marina had been with Isabella Johnson for months. She's probably just going through a tough personal time." "Michael, I know what I'm seeing, and I'm not the only one. Several employees have commented on strange behaviors, too many casual encounters, glances that last longer than appropriate." "Do you have proof of anything inappropriate?" "I don't need proof to know that this is affecting the work environment and the company's productivity, and frankly, I'm not going to wait for something to blow up publicly to take action." Marina heard footsteps approaching and quickly returned to pretending she was cleaning, but her mind was racing. Dr. Patricia suspected something and was planning to take action. The rest of the day passed in a haze of anxiety. Marina made several small mistakes at work, knocked over a plant pot on the 15th floor, and almost arrived late for her evening class because she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she had overheard. That night, after her advanced pharmacology class, she called Michael. "We need to talk," she said bluntly when he answered. "Is something wrong? Your voice sounds strange." "Can you meet me at our usual spot in an hour?" "Sure. Marina, you're worrying me." The usual spot was a small 24-hour cafe in Brooklyn, far enough from the business district that they wouldn't risk running into co-workers. Michael arrived 15 minutes early, already sitting at a table in the back when Marina walked in. He stood up when he saw her, and Marina had to fight the urge to throw herself into his arms. In the 3 months of their secret relationship, they had become masters of extremely discreet public displays of affection, a touch of hands while passing coffees, a glance that lasted 2 seconds longer than normal, a nearly imperceptible smile. "What happened?" he asked as soon as she sat down. Marina recounted the conversation between Dr. Patricia and Dr. Eduardo, watching Michael's expression grow darker. "She's planning something," Marina concluded, "and Eduardo didn't seem willing to stop her." Michael fell silent for a long moment, absently stirring the coffee he had ordered. "I knew this would happen eventually," he finally said. "You knew?" "Patricia never approved of our involvement. From the beginning, she made it clear she thought it was inappropriate. And Eduardo, despite being my friend, is extremely conservative when it comes to corporate matters. What do you think she's going to do? She'll probably take the situation to the board, claim that my behavior is compromising the company, create a situation where they will force me to choose. Marina felt her stomach drop. Choose between what? Between you and health tech. The words hung in the air between them, laden with implications neither wanted to face. What if it comes to that? Marina asked quietly. What would you do? Michael looked her directly in the eyes. Do you really need to ask? Michael, you can't sacrifice your company for me. You built this from the ground up. It's your whole life. Marina, you are my whole life. Health tech is just work. It's not just work, and you know it. It's jobs for thousands of people, enormous responsibilities, everything you've ever dreamed of. I dreamed of success because I thought it was the only thing that could make me happy. Now I know I was wrong. Marina felt tears start to form. This is crazy. We're from different worlds, Michael. Maybe Patricia is right. Maybe this is unsustainable. Don't say that. Michael's voice hardened. Don't let them convince you that we don't deserve a chance. It's not about deserving. It's about being realistic about the consequences. And what would your realistic solution be? Pretend the last 3 months didn't happen. Go back to being strangers who politely greet each other in the hallways. Marina couldn't answer because, honestly, she didn't know what the solution was. She just knew she couldn't bear the thought of Michael losing everything because of her. Marina? Michael reached across the table, lightly touching her fingers. Whatever storm is coming, we'll face it together, okay? Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was Julia calling from small town. Sorry, it's my sister. It might be important. Marina answered quickly. Ju, what happened? Mari, it's Dad. He had a severe diabetic crisis. He's in the hospital. You need to come home. The world seemed to collapse around Marina. What? How is he? Stable now, but the doctors want to run more tests. Mari, I'm scared. I'm coming. I'll take the first bus tomorrow morning. When she hung up, Michael was watching her with evident concern. Family emergency? He asked. Marina quickly explained about her father. Michael listened in silence, then said, I'm going with you. Michael, you can't. I can and I will. You need support right now, and I'm not going to let you face this alone. What if someone finds out? What if this gives Patricia even more ammunition? Michael stood up and signaled for the waiter to bring the check. Marina, some things are more important than corporate politics. Your family is one of them. And as they left the cafe together, Marina realized that Michael had just made exactly the kind of choice that Dr. Patricia was hoping he would make, putting his personal feelings above professional considerations. It was a gesture of love that could cost him everything. The trip from New York to small town had never felt so long. Marina sat in the passenger seat of Michael's luxury sedan, watching the rural landscape of the Midwest pass by the window as she tried to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Michael had insisted on driving himself, dismissing the driver and cancelling all meetings for the week. Some things are more important than work, he had said when she protested, and Marina knew that this decision would only confirm all. Dr. Patricia's suspicions lingered, but now, with her father hospitalized and Julia frightened, none of that seemed to matter. The general hospital was small compared to the medical complexes in New York, but it was clean and well organized. Emily rushed through the familiar corridors. She had spent several nights there during her adolescence, whenever her father's diabetes flared up. Julia stood up from the plastic chair in the waiting room and threw herself into her sister's arms. Now 18, she had grown quite a bit since Emily's last visit, but still looked like a scared child. How is he? Emily asked, hugging her sister tightly. Stable. Dr. Henry said he made it in time, but it was close. His blood sugar was extremely high, and he was dehydrated. Julia paused, noticing Michael standing discreetly behind Emily. Who is he? Emily turned around, realizing she had completely forgotten to prepare Julia for Michael's presence. Ju, this is Michael, a friend from New York who wanted to come with me. Michael stepped forward with a gentle smile and extended his hand. Julia, right? Emily talks a lot about you. Nice to meet you. Julia shook his hand, clearly curious but too polite to ask questions in front of a stranger. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming with Emily. Can I see Dad? Emily asked. You can, but he's sleeping. The sedatives are still taking effect. Emily found her father in the small ward, connected to several machines monitoring his vital signs. John Johnson, 58, looked smaller in the hospital bed, more fragile than she remembered. His calloused hands from decades of driving trucks seemed lost on the white sheet. She sat in the chair beside the bed and took his hand. Hi, Dad. It's Emily. I'm here. He opened his eyes slowly, still confused from the medication. Em, you came? Of course I did, silly. You scared me terribly. Sorry, sweetheart. I've been slacking off with the meds, eating junk. His voice was weak, but he tried to smile. How are things in the big city? They're good, Dad. I'm graduating in 6 months. I'm so proud, he whispered. My daughter, the nurse. Michael had stayed outside the room, respecting the family's privacy, but Emily could see him through the glass, quietly talking to Julia. Her sister was animatedly gesturing, probably telling him about the veterinary program she had started at the Federal University. After an hour, when her father fell back asleep, Emily stepped out to find Michael and Julia sitting in the hospital cafeteria, sharing a sandwich and a conversation that seemed surprisingly natural. So Emily has always been the responsible one in the family, Julia was saying. Since she was little, she took care of everyone. When Dad got sick the first time, she was 17 and took charge of everything, doctors, medications, bills. She's always been like that, Michael agreed, taking care of others before herself. Emily approached the table, touched by how easily Michael had integrated into her family, but also worried about the implications of this closeness. How is he? Michael asked immediately. Better. He woke up for a few minutes. We talked a bit. Emily sat beside him, allowing herself a moment of physical closeness she had avoided in front of Julia. The doctor wants to keep him for 2 more days for observation. Great. Then we can stay until he gets discharged, Michael said naturally. Michael, you don't have to. Of course I do. Where do you think I would go? Julia watched the interaction between the two with growing interest. Em, can I talk to you for a minute, alone? The two stepped out to the small garden behind the hospital, where Julia immediately got straight to the point. Okay, now explain to me who this guy really is. Emily sighed. It's complicated, Ju. Complicated how? Is he married? Does he have a girlfriend? Is he your boss? The last 2 options. Emily! Julia stared at her with wide eyes. Are you dating your boss? It's not exactly like that. Emily tried to explain the situation, carefully editing the more delicate details. Let me see if I got this right. He's the CEO of the company where you work. You fell in love, and now you're trying to keep a secret relationship because it would be a scandal if anyone found out. Basically, yes. Julia was silent for a moment, processing the information. Em, he seems like a good guy, and the way he looks at you, wow. How does he look at me? Like you're the most precious thing in the world. I've never seen anyone look at another person like that, not even in movies. Emily felt her chest tighten. But Ju, the situation is impossible. We're from completely different worlds. And so, love doesn't choose social class, Em. It's not that simple. Of course it is. The question is, do you love him? Emily hesitated because verbalizing it would make everything even more real. Yes, very much. And does he love you? I think so. Then the rest is just temporary complications. Julia's simplicity was both comforting and frustrating. At 18, her sister still believed that love could overcome any obstacle. They spent the next 2 days in a kind of surreal family bubble. Michael stayed at a simple inn in the city centre, but spent most of his time with them at the hospital. He easily conversed with their father about soccer and politics, helped Julia with a biochemistry assignment, and insisted on covering all the medical expenses that Medicare wouldn't pay. More importantly, he seemed genuinely comfortable in the simple environment of small town. He ate empanadas at the market, had coffee at the local bakery, and walked the cobblestone streets as if he weren't a billionaire accustomed to the luxuries of New York. It was on the second night, as they were walking through the town square after dropping Julia off at home, that Emily finally voiced her fears. Michael, do you realize what you're doing? Taking care of the woman I love when she needs it. Why? Because you disappeared from work for 3 days without a proper explanation. Because your executive assistant must be calling desperately. Because Patricia probably already called an emergency board meeting. Michael stopped walking and turned to her. Emily, are you suggesting that I should have let you face this alone? I'm suggesting that you need to think about the consequences, your company, your reputation, everything you've built. It can all go to hell if it means losing you. Don't say that. It's true, Emily. In the last 3 months, for the first time in my adult life, I have been truly happy. Do you think I'm going to sacrifice that for corporate policies? What if the board fires you? What if you lose everything? Then we'll rebuild together. You, me, and our family. The word family hit her like a lightning bolt. Michael, Emily, marry me. The world seemed to stop. They were standing in the middle of a town square, under the dim light of old street lamps, and Michael was asking her to marry him. Are you crazy? Completely, he smiled. Crazy for you. Emily, I don't want to live in fear of what people will think anymore. I want you to be my wife. I want to build a life with you. I want your family to be my family. Michael, you haven't even bought a ring. I don't need a ring to know that I love you. And you love me too, so what's the problem? Emily looked around the familiar town square, at the church where she was baptized, at the house where she grew up visible on the hilltop, at the impossible man asking to share his life with her. The problem is that when we go back to New York, there will be a corporate war waiting for us. Then we'll win that war, together. And there, under the stars of the Midwest, Emily finally stopped fighting against the inevitable. Yes, she simply said. Yes. Yes, Michael, I will marry you. When he kissed her, Emily knew that regardless of the storms waiting for them in New York, she had made the only decision that mattered. She had chosen love,